service du principe de Jordan. The Assembly of First Nations welcomes you to Jordan's Principal Service Coordinators Gathering, Building Connections. Good morning, everyone. My name is Matthew Kershane. I'll be your facilitator or chair for our session, our two-day session. At this point, I'd like to invite Elder Charles Patton, who's a respected elder in the, I'm practicing this, it's a new word for me, Kanien'kehá:ka. Kanien'kehá:ka. I don't think I have the flow, but Kanien'kehá:ka, Mohawk community of Kahnawake, which is on the south shore of the island here in Montreal. His name means speckled flower. He's from the Bear Clan. He's been married for 47 years. He's a father of 3 and grandfather of 7 grandchildren. He's a faith keeper at the Mohawk Trail Longhouse in Kahnawake. He used to be a runner, still runs. He ran all the way here. He's a fluent speaker and is the first teacher in the elementary school system qualified to teach an immersion physical education program in the language. And please help me welcome Elder Charles Patton.
Honegi kuchokwa negi onas as esquadron siuste negi wagre wangenya hese nene to kalani wona kene akatawona kawena hot kari wote kwa nela deli wanuta nene kan hotu kwa ta ne wateri wa taanti onegi tunu kate ni anta chitwa sere negi chini yochi runateri wasaluni runateri wisunu kwa sochra jutko haka tekene kanamara tumchra onene tunu tonene na chitwa ere umani ro getserate Ona jini chiko nute sa wata wayado, ojage wako yete hanano honto ojage ya. Ojage wai kariwe sona si jutkudakwa si jakwatatkas. Wahi garichi agil kwari wakwanyost. Ona ki wahine jini chiko nute sa wata wajagwe ko skona jini chite kugane. Skona jini yachi sa wanu tunyo. Ne hakwe ko te kwanora skati. Ona ne tununa katawana era te chun yuki ni stanchi hunzante. Ne chatawani saragi chatawa sunte ke jutkune yuki at ke no hajes yuki narukwa. Jina ho tane yakota sirawa ne a ohunte suma chataka hantake. Ne gi wahine hojake huniro kogite chiti yut karok tan satkato. Ne ohunte ni wasoko te kwa. Hei zagaroga te chinioscats. Tane ne niu ni ne ndaku ne ki chino ho te ako tasira wa yakitnistan o te rasua ne ki wahi ne tunu asiro go ne tunu te ko tawaye ako e ko chino ho te ne diun heje tunu te tuna di hon tosros lau di sat stonsra ako e ko ne I ko hunu ni toes ne tunu te jokwahas ne yakwa tunu ni yakwa te rute ne tunu ni yakwa twajirino Jina hoti kwa diante, jinia kwa nasota, jinia kwa runkatsirota. Jinu ne akilo chukwahas ne kwa satstansra. Negi alihuni kuhnunitoes. Negi war alihuni ang kagweni ses antawana kwa hunwani tawaya dotas. Ona ne nioni chikanu kwatsiragero. Ne nioni wahi ne akilo ne te sukwaya towi ne sukwaya diswa. Kahisunga ne wahiagero tana ne agero ne ko ni huntessa net kwa kuano ne ki ko okwa huene jutkota ko ne roti ne giro di agero to wayarito ne ki chiniore chika na kako tana chiniore to wali wagonya stena hot ne nioni wahi ne asudal nikota te ko kuma ne ki wahi ne rati hante hakwe ko china hoti un hejene kakwagero Negi wahi ko te la swiji se yu dio taches yu kia te kenu haches segi wahi ne te wat soyes na hoto ne to sai to watu kayake la wero ne sakwaya disuna kan he kayantake jina hota wo gesu ne te ko tawoye ne sa ko jinu ma suma ko jun suma to wine ko jutka de sesne atsak tu je watu haches ne niu ni wahi chika hakero chika kwiragero Ne nioni ne karhagung sanau ka gudidake no gestures no what the one not tukwa ne gudio chataka yotake oskanunto net kwa guwana ne awareness ko ya disune ai doaksake ne wahi ne raudi waro oskanunto Nega yukia take na iungwanu kwa kahake. Ona ne aska kajito wawe nuni gwa nigula kwe kono ho tu wak take na to de tinwara duchis kadi to gine na yo tu hak ne gwa nigula. Ona ne tu no ne ayun gwa tu kwa wulu ene gana gwa de gwa den jista duje. Ne rawere ne sugwa ya disuna ga wero to yo wero te. Ne oni wahi ne tu no tatihas rau di sat stosra. Ne kwa ta dare ne ona ne tu dawe ne wasira rago. Ne te tadiha ne yo wera wisto. Watski toka ne stua za wa dariha ta kanye takwe. Tana ne jino ne yo go ne resta ne jino yore na kanye. Tana ne niyo ni tunu ko di dakano jes. Agira ko di jino jes ne gi agiru ne ojito kuma ene kana kwara di jino jes. Kwa koni ka jito zera da squachi ni yore skajiera oru ye ko sugaya disere rau sat stans. Rau chen. Ona ne niyo ni teke ni dira kwara ke ene kana kwa de kwa den jista tuje. Ye chi do wa chi e jit kuta ko rotali ha to no huncha ke tano garasne yo kisota. Kwa chi ni ore di jisto kwaro. Ona ne a gwe ko askak se ajito wa we no ni kwa ni ko ato ajito wa tano wara to gwe ko no ho te ne karu ya ke se de kuta wo ye. To kine na yo to ak ne kwa ni gung. Ona ne china kwa adi ne sungwa ya disu ne wasage ni no raro ke uani ru ka charade kwa kene tai no rado tane ne niyo ni ne nyungwa socha jut ko runto ne gi wai ne ka hante ne ona suma ne gi wai ne hoja ge wai china ho te so watara ko ki ko raksa ne gi Jordan ruwayat square ne gi wai ka higere ji oja ge yuk stage china awa Tana sewa jere saka gweni negi wahine a izagar ayagwa ya sanu hage tunu jinia wa tana ne ka saro tane yagwa ka ragunso ona ne ahiri wa ne gonna suga ya disu unya ka wa ne nam ha yu junia daran hets ka ne ayagwaste agwe go ayagwa rage wanya zo gunsa so gosar negi wa ona izwa ga hiune Swam tagum so o gonrazers yok stages. Ne nioni ne castozeri on tatkawe. Ne aye agwe ramzaka hawi te no de so wak stage. Azawa hunti ne azawa azawa duye and azawa wara di hatto izaya de gena. Tan ne nioni na kwa ne kanute. Ne giwahi ne so anyazagum so ne ona no ho de yut kohoro. Jini yok stage ne ramzaka hawi te. That's quite knock and agua, Eugene Guararunu, Hamzaka no Arehake, or ne scona as one of the new hake. Then the Jinaguadine, Hagir and Erodianex, down Kawanyan, Neganwara Dunsra, Gani Stansra, and then Nioni, down Kawanyan, Negan, Ganwara Dutcha, Guages and Wara Duchess. Juniorica in your rivoke, Tanane, Unguesum or Nuke. Tanaradik sau uma kwatan yore ka wana dakine jino ne wa ine agiru ne lahadi go saduji hagwe go ne kan wara don chirau de liwaga ai aja kwa wana kawa hagwe go jesa no wara duji one gi sakari wan ho to go no ho to umani ro get sarate tano yor ne ha so wat ko ni zate aya mos ka hiri wa ne go ne so ya de so ya da gehna ne an so ya sio hake tanane ai so wa ga ra tane na ho tane ka gweni zaya yana re haga chini chi hanso wayo ta ye chia ta ke na ra dik sau kuma o je ge ru di no wak tanyu ko one ki to ka dina ka re wat gweni I tried to do that as fast as I could but I always tell people I said when they ask us to go places I said maybe if you got an hour that would be good but they say can you do it in 5 minutes And there ain't no self-respect in Mohawk. Go anywhere. They can only talk for 5 minutes. It's not that we're full of it. What I know is that I always say our ancestors, they left us, we're very lucky. They left us with so much knowledge and mind and teachings that we have a responsibility to share it. And this opening, what we call Ohontakari Wadeko, is one of those responsibilities. If we sat and talked of creation story, we could talk for the next 3 or 4 hours. in our world how creation started and why we sit here and why we do things the way we do that. But we don't have that time. But we understand that this words that we use comes right out of the original thing that happened when the Creator made human beings. He made us out of the living earth. And when human beings, the man and the male and female, were made, He gave us a piece of His mind. I say He loaned us His mind. He gave us His fire, and it burns in your blood today. He gave us His breath, and you breathe every second of the time that you live. And what He said to us when He gave us the original instructions, He picked up the living earth, and He said, this earth is your mother. She will care for you. She will love you. She will help you. Always take care of her and nurture her and respect your mother. Always give thanks. And that's what these words are about. So for all of you, the people that I see here, some of you I have seen before and we shook hands, and some of you have become very good friends. We seem to pass each other everywhere we go. And so I have a great deal of respect for you. My friends over here, the singers here, I've known them for years. You know, some of them I was their teacher a long time ago. And so for all of the people who have come from all different directions, I acknowledge you for the things that you do. And now we turn our minds to our Mother, the earth. And every day and every night and every second that we live, our Mother takes care of her, takes care of us. All the things that we need, she provides for us. And so we acknowledge her at this time. And our Mother wears a beautiful, beautiful dress. Just like in Indian country, I don't care where you go. When you go to ceremony houses, anywhere, they will tell you before you enter, you put on a dress. A woman should wear a dress. This is symbolic of her power, of her responsibility, of who she is. And it goes that deep to this dress that our Mother, the earth, wears. This beautiful dress of greenery. And some will say, if you stand in a field in the spring, as far as your eye can see, you will see the beauty of the greeneries of this dress that she wears. And just like Indian dress, a woven beaded dress, beaded into this beautiful dress are all the things of life. You will see that beaded underneath is all of the root life that lives. And there's nothing in this world that can survive and live without the roots. If that great maple tree that we take the sap from in the spring, if its roots are weak, that tree will die. Even for you, our people who are here today, if our roots, we come from roots. Our roots is what they say, where we draw our lineage from. That means our mother, our grandmother, our great-grandmother, and all the way back as far as our eye can see into our memories of our people. This is who we are. Our languages come through our mother. Everything that we understand comes through our lineage and our family. And when that lineage is broke or cut, then we know what happens there. And we know what happens when people are no longer grounded and have they're not centered in this world. And we see that on the streets. We see that in the hospitals. And so we turn our ground to our Mother, the earth, and we give her our greetings. And to the root life, and to the medicines that live on the earth. There's nothing in this world that cannot survive, and no sickness that exists that medicines can't cure. It's us that don't understand them anymore. The medicines are alive just like you. They hear just like you do. And they need to hear us. When we go to pick medicine, speak to them, put tobacco in exchange for the medicine. And they need to believe, they feel our spirit. If we don't believe in them, they won't help us either. And we put all our faith today in a machine, medicine of a machine, but a machine has no spirit. And so we give our greetings to the medicines of life, to the berry life, to all the different kinds of berries. This morning I took an extra helping of those raspberries and blackberries and those strawberries and all those different things. That's what the Creator planted for us. And the strawberry is the leader of all the berry life. Its lineage goes back as far as creation. When Sky Woman, her granddaughter, now gave birth to our Creator and his twin. In giving birth, she died. And when they put her in the ground, from her brain or from her mind grew the sacred tobacco. That's why we burn tobacco. From her heart grew the sacred strawberries. It's the shape of her heart. You squeeze it and it bleeds. It's the leader of all berries in this world. In our teachings, it says there should always be strawberry drink at every ceremony that we do. That's how powerful it is. We turn our minds to the three sisters, corn, beans, squash, and all the food life. They're the leaders of all food life that live in this world. So we give them our greetings. Even in our longhouses, in our part of the world, every ceremony that we do almost is about food, because we understand without food there is no life. And whenever there's a ceremony, at the end there should be food on the table, so we eat, and that shows us that what we're doing continues. Food exists. So we acknowledge the food life, to the waters of life. Everything that exists, we need water to survive. Good water, clean water. And so we acknowledge all the waters of life and the things that grow and live in the water, the fish life and the bug life, and even that great otter who swims at the edge of the river. You think he's just running around, fooling around, but that great otter, in his spirit, he has a spirit relationship with us, and he carries great medicine. We have Otter Society. When some people are going through such heavy abuse or hurting of their spirit, that otter can help them to take away that heaviness. He has great power. We just need to believe in him. And then we turn our minds now to the trees, all the small trees, the red willows, the first of all trees that came into our world from Sky World. It's a great medicine. In most nations, they understand the medicine that red willow gives us. We drink it, and it purifies our blood and our systems. To that great maple tree, the leader of all tree life. So we acknowledge all the trees in this world that grow. And we take a sap in the spring, and we drink that. And we make sugar from that. That was our first sugar. We acknowledge all the trees that live. In the forest run the animals, what we call the the animals we kill to take their lives to feed our children. And they say they speak for themselves. No one controls their mind or their thinking. And they're very special in this world. And the leader is the great white-tailed deer. And so his meat is our medicine. And he gives us an example of how we should walk in this world with a strong lineage. And that deer will survive. That deer carries himself with grace and beauty. And that deer carries a peaceful mind. This is the way that we should walk in this world. So we acknowledge the animals that live. And so as one mind now, we bundle you as one mind. All the things that we just acknowledge on your behalf, now we bundle you and we give thanks on your behalf, on behalf of your families. And so now our minds are one. Now we turn to the sky and we see that the winds blow in above our heads. The north wind brings the cold, and the south brings the warmth. The west and the east bring the rains and snows. We acknowledge them. In those west winds come the grandfather thunder. And then we also turn our minds now to the bird life that fly above our heads. All the different kinds of birds, to the great eagle, that's the Creator's eyes into this world. We acknowledge them. They have great responsibility. You know, those birds, they take their seeds and they drop the seeds all over the earth. So the earth is always being reseeded and transplanted. We use their feathers for our hats and different things like that. We use their meat as our food, and even their oil is our medicine. But the earth's birds carry even greater power. They say when our people are at a stage in life when maybe our spirit is so hurt that we think that we cannot go one more second of our lives in this life, then we are thinking of taking our lives. We don't know what to do. They say, go out at the break of dawn, and every bird that lives, as soon as the sun peeks over the edge of the sky, that every bird that sings will live, and they'll show us the way that they say his life is precious, and always give thanks to life. So we acknowledge the bird life. And then to the two sons, our older brother, the sun, our grandmother, the moon. The sun works with men. He warms up the earth. But the grandmother moon, she works with life. She works with the monthly cycle of the women and the coming of maybe birth and conception. In all things that grow, work with the power of the moon. The corn absorbs the warmth of the sun at night when the moon's face is above us, is when corn grows. All things that live work with the women's world. And women are so powerful and so precious in our world. And we need to remind our people that. And we need to remind the women themselves of the special relationship they have about life and giving thanks to our grandmother, the moon. And always, now that we have a baby, now we nurture that baby. And even in this time, you're gathered here to talk about this one little boy who struggled with his life. He came into the world and he struggled. But the parents, they loved him. They tried to help him. They nurtured him the best they could. And maybe the system around him failed him. That's why you're here. And that's a reminder for us. That's telling us now what we have to do. That plants a seed in our mind so that seed will grow. And now we don't let his life go to waste for nothing. He came in here to teach us, to teach the people about our responsibility, that we nurture life and we love life. And we should care and love for all that come into this world the best we can. And I'm sure the parents, they did that. And they still love him. But he was brought here to teach us how do you move forward. So no other little boy or girl or man or woman should go without help and suffer in that way. This is the lesson that he gives to us. Now we turn our minds to the stars, and we don't know all their names anymore, but we acknowledge the stars that live above our heads. And so we give thanks to all things of the sky. And we bundle our minds as one mind, and we give them our thanks and our greetings, and we understand how precious they are. And now we turn to the Creator, and we give the Creator our thanks, because He gathered you here. He allowed you to be here. And I often tell people, I said, do you think you came here because it was that you chose to be here? And I think different. I think the Creator, when you were born, in our ways, they said the Creator, He has a stick for everyone that's born. And on that stick is notched how many days you have to live on this earth. And when there's no more time left, then the Creator will take our lives and we move on to the sky world. But I believe the Creator on the other side, He also has a notch for all the things that you will do, your purpose for coming to this world. And I believe that the Creator for all of you has chosen for you to do the work that you're doing. He put these things on your path so you could help your people. You could help your children. And so I acknowledge all of you at this time. And so now we give greetings. What we say is, we just talked about this young boy, Jordan, and all the other things that we have seen in our community. And when we see things like this that wound our spirit, that hurt our hearts, it says that when we think of things, tears come to our eyes, and our eyes cloud over, and we can't see clearly because of the pain that we feel. And so what we do is we reach into the Creator's land, and we ask the Creator to give us the softest, most beautiful deerskin. And we use that spirit of that skin, and we wipe your eyes. Each and every one of you. So now you can see clearly. We wipe the tears from your eyes, the spirit tears. Now you can see clearly. We open this third eye here, the spirit eye that you have. So you can now see clearly from that eye to now the path that's in front of you. And when great sadness fills our ears with the dust of sorrow and our breath. Now we ask the Creator to give us that beautiful eagle feather from the Creator's bird. And now we wipe your ears and your sinuses so that you can hear now each other speak from not just from your lips, from your spirit. Jorunke, where your feelings lie, let that come alive, not just empty words. Words that come from your spirit. Now hear each other, and now you will use those words with clear sight. Now you can understand what your path is in the future. And also when heaviness strikes our world, our words get blocked up right here. It's like there's a great lump in our throat. We can't speak about things that need to be said. And also there's a fire that burns in our heart. Jorunge, they call that where your spirit lies, where your feelings lie. And a lot of times I go to conferences there, at medical conferences, they'll say, "Wow, I come up after, well, you don't understand. Your feelings don't lie here. They lie in this place in our brain." And I said to them, each and every one of you, every person that lives, we have lost someone. And when that body lays in front of us, in that last minute, when we're now going to close that box or wrap them and put them in the ground, where does it burn? It burns here. Where is it so heavy and your feelings are burning and suffering? It burns here. It doesn't burn here. Our ancestors understood that. And they understand this is where our spirit feelings lie. And so we offer that drink to you now, the finest water from Creator's land. And we wash away that lump in your throat. And we add to it the medicines. And we wash away that burning in your chest. Now we make you whole again. We ask the Creator to make you whole again. Now you can go on with what you have to do. And so now, on behalf of, we all understand in the way of nations. I traveled with the chiefs for 20 years or so. I've been around Confederacy Way with chiefs for the last 35 years or so. Always it says that when we go to meet with any nation, all the nations that gather, we have the first thing we do, there is a way. And so on behalf of our leaders, our chiefs, we send the greetings to your leaders and your chiefs from all the communities that you come from Mohawk to you. Now the way has been made good between us, and we are friends. And from behalf of our clan mothers, our women leaders, we send greetings to your women leaders from all places and in all directions. Take those words back and say, Mohawk women leaders have sent their finest greetings. From our faith keepers, our spirit leaders, to your spirit leaders, to your pipe carriers, to your medicine men, we send our greetings between us, to them. The way has been made good between us. And to our men and our women, to your men and to your women, even as deep as to our children, to your children. And our ancestors, they said it goes even further than that. To the ones whose faces are sticking out of the clay of the earth, they're waiting to be born. They're our future. We send greetings to your future. Someday, when they take their first breath and they're of cognizant mind, then you will remind them, Mohawk people have already sent their greetings, and the way has been made good between us, and we are friends. So with these words, now we open your gathering. We have cleared your eyes, your ears, and your throat. Your words now will come. And we have centered you in our relationship with us and the earth, in all things on the earth. And one thing you understand now, and you should understand, is it's beautiful to talk about all of this paperwork and all of these machine work, computers, and all kind of things in this world. But the earth and our relationship is bigger than that. We should always make time to give thanks to our mother. We should always make time to give thanks to the cycle of life. That's what we're part of. And if that cycle of life ends, we won't be sitting here. It won't matter how much papers we got, what kind of budgets we work with, if there's no air to breathe. If the sun pulls back his power and the earth grows cold, when we no longer hear the last bird sing or the last baby being born, what good will all these papers do then? We have a responsibility as Native people. The Creator always, and creation should always hear our voices and feel our hearts. And we should always remember to give thanks. That's what we're told every day in our language, awo nizra, another breath. When you open your eyes in the morning and you see your first ray of sunlight, then you should give thanks. And that's the way it is amongst our peoples. So with that, we open your gathering. We thank you for listening, and we wish you the best of luck.
You guys, Charles, I would like to introduce the Red Tail Spirit Drum Group, and maybe if you can say a few words on the couple of songs you're going to be singing for us, and then we'll get going.
Good morning. My name is Gornhia Agesu, which means a walking sky. I am the drum keeper for the Red Tail Spirit Singers from Ganawagi. And the first song we're going to sing is in respect to all of those who have gone before us and for all the great eagle staffs across our great nation that are carried by our leaders, and to pay respect to those feathers and the wisdom that it gives us. So this song is going to be called our flag song. And then after that, we might do the twist or the hooky-joo. We ask that you all rise for this song first. If you don't have an eagle feather in your hat, put it in your hat.
Louis Guetch, Red Tail Spirit Drum. Had I known we were going to start with that song or end with that song, I would have skipped my coffee. I'm like pumped and ready to go, right? I skipped it. Quelques mots de bienvenue. Je vais demander à le chef régional de l'Assemblée des Premières Nations du Québec-Labrador, chef régional Ghislain Picard. Please help me welcome Regional Chief Ghislain Picard.
Good morning, everyone. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. C'est un plaisir d'avoir ces quelques minutes là pour vous souhaiter la bienvenue. C'est d'abord d'ahnen merwiya pishti bihman zati pour regarder de quoi notre métier mukte weitiek nigan hatak. C'est de chef de l'hôpital d'Anome merwiya pishti bihman zati temskata quoi. ما باوشكت تشوينش كماغوت شيغانا نودو ديغوت سيوزن ما تشوينش كماغ يابت تيويغن نانتم تشوي نيغان ياك نيغان شتاياك تي ويتياك هنيوياك ما با شيغانا نوغي متاس كيويل تقولوي ناولوي موزتشينش كماغن قول ما تشوي نسبدل دينو مي امام ويتياكا هغات Tandis que tseldenano no temechak mogde wejaak mistam host tsiono. Chewi natem nigan stawak stwasim noto danyono. Egunen del denchka hagati motiviak. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Ça me fait extrêmement plaisir d'avoir ces quelques moments, ces quelques instants avec vous ce matin pour vous souhaiter la bienvenue et peut-être partager un peu des réflexions en lien avec la question et le sujet qui nous intéresse, le principe de Jordan. Et on sait tous que vous êtes au front à tous les jours pour essayer de faire en sorte que les gouvernements, tant provinciaux que fédéraux, puissent évidemment respecter ce principe-là et surtout poser les gestes nécessaires pour faire en sorte que la situation de nos populations et plus particulièrement de nos jeunes puisse s'améliorer et changer de façon définitive. You all look very beautiful. You all look like you understood what I just said. Good acting. I'm from the Innu Nation. Originally, if you travel east, my community sits on the shores of the St. Lawrence, a 5-hour drive from Quebec City, eastward. I won't be able to stay here today, nor I won't be able to be here tomorrow because I'm traveling further east today, visiting one Innu community, a flying community, because they're going to be inaugurating a new cell service for an isolated community, which is a big thing for many of our communities, as you all know. And not only for economic opportunities, but as well to facilitate means that the community doesn't have in terms of telehealth, for instance. So it is a very important moment for the community, and it's the community that sits at the very edge of the province of Quebec, right next to Labrador. I want to certainly acknowledge the drum this morning. Always very important to start any gathering in the right way, and acknowledge as well our relative, Elder Patton, for his word of his prayer. I believe the shorter version of it. And acknowledge as well our relatives who are greeting us on their traditional unceded territory this morning. I want to acknowledge as well my good friend and colleague Kevin Hart, Regional Chief from Manitoba, and thanking him for taking on this very important file, and acknowledge each and every one of you coming from all directions. J'aimerais tout spécialement, évidemment, reconnaître les délégués de notre région, Québec-Labrador. I especially want to acknowledge our delegates from Quebec and Labrador who are taking part in this two-day gathering. Last week, I was in this very hotel greeting our representatives from the National Association of Health Managers, First Nation Health Managers. I believe around 600 of them. And this was their 9th annual meeting last week. And I was privileged enough to be able to take part at the conclusion of their meeting. And this was after we hosted a delegation from Anishinaabe Aski Nation in Wendake last week again, speaking about governance in health, but speaking about transformation in health as well. And I was privileged enough to be able to be there to greet them. And so if anyone says that we're not proactive, then they're wrong. I think much is happening on the ground. Much is happening in terms of what happens in our respective nations and communities. And the meeting we had with NAN in particular was very revealing in terms of the challenges that we all face. And we could be anywhere in this country. We know that they're not different. And I certainly want to take just a few seconds to acknowledge my good friend and brother, Deputy Grand Chief of the Innu Nation, Etienne Rich, who is with us with his colleagues from Labrador. I had a chat with the Deputy Grand Chief 10 days ago, along with the Chief from Chehachiu, Eugene Hart, and speaking about the situation of their community, which is in many cases similar to that of many of our communities across the country, and the fact that one tragic death can have lasting ripple effects in the community. And this is, I think, the reason why they're here, because they certainly want to speak to Jordan's principle about how they can expect a greater opportunity and greater support from both the province of Newfoundland and Canada. So these are key example of the kind of situations that we face. It's also in this on this unceded territory in the city of Montreal that we signed on a Declaration on the Rights of First Nation Children. This was in 2015, as we were privileged enough to be hosting the AG of the AFN at that time. And one of the first persons to sign on that declaration was Cindy Blackstock. Certainly want to acknowledge her and her presence here. And because it's really what it's all about, right? And to me, that declaration and what we do onward is about the future of our kids. Next week, the province of Quebec will be hosting what we call the Week of the Little Ones. And they have invited us in the last few years to take part, and I think it's very important that we seize these opportunities as well to educate, but also create alliances that are much needed. Because as you know, times are changing. We have a new government, a new minority government, so that will certainly, things will play different in Ottawa. And I think we need to take advantage of that situation. And I certainly believe that the first and number one issue for this government should be the fact that this new government has been in denial in terms of the compliances for the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal. 7 times they've been called on to comply, and 7 times they've been in denial, and that has to change. To me, if our leaders across the country agree, then that should be the first issue that we address to this government. As I said, new colors in Parliament, light blue, Bloc Québécois has now 31 seats. They've been allies in the past, and I think they can be allies again in terms of these issues. So I'm hoping that these 2 days will be certainly rich in discussion and dialogue between yourselves. I certainly hope the best for you during your stay. And by the way, it's minus 22 outside right now. But you enjoy. This is, as you know, weather that we're used to across the country. And it's just a waker-upper, as they say. So again, my greetings to all of you on behalf of our leadership in Quebec and Labrador. And my best wishes to you for the next 2 days. Merci beaucoup.
At this point, I'd like to invite the Assembly of First Nations portfolio holder for social development and Jordan's Principal, Regional Chief Kevin Hart. Oh, there he is.
Bonjour. Je suis le chef régional Kevin Hart de Manitoba. Bienvenue à Montréal pour la réunion de principal de Jordan. I'm going to look at my brother Gislan to see how did I do. Good morning, everybody. Tanse and tutamak. Pego patago seo and disnikas homasquan tutem. The name the grandmother's given me is One Voice. I am from the Bear Clan. I want to acknowledge my brother this morning and his teachings, Elder Patton, as well as the drum group, Grand Chiefs, Regional Chief, ladies and gentlemen, and especially you as the service coordinators here this morning. You know, I lift and I greet you up and I honor you for the hard work that you do. You know, it's not an easy task. I know that being somebody from Treaty 5, I'm from originally the Nishnawasi Cree Nation, which is also known as Nelson House. In our language, it means where three rivers meet. But Nelson House is one of the sister communities of Norway House, where Jordan River Anderson is from, and they're both in Treaty 5 territory. They're only about a couple hours away from each other by road when we're up in northern Manitoba. So, you know, I obviously want to acknowledge that. I want to acknowledge the traditional territories of our relatives here in Quebec. Of course, there's many First Nations here, and especially, you know, I want to thank again the elder for your wise words and your teachings that you gave us this morning, because I was sharing with some people, that was the very fast version of the prayer and the teachings that they give, because I know that I've been in those ceremonies and that when they do their ceremony, it's a couple hours before they start interpreting it. So you guys got the very, very short version of that this morning. So I want to thank you, Elder Patton, for that. And to also remind us of those teachings that you gave us this morning. You know, it's been a while since I heard some of those teachings, and it was very good to hear that from you this morning. You know, Jordan River Anderson obviously is a story that's touched all our lives and touched many people across this country, especially in the First Nation communities. You know, his struggle just to be a child and be able to live in his own human community and to get the proper care and the necessary resources is obviously why we're here today and what had resulted in that young man's death. You know, Jordan River Anderson just wanted to be at home with his family. You know, now that we look at Jordan's principle, it is indeed a legal principle now here in Canada. Canada is obligated to ensure that First Nation children are not treated differently and have an equal opportunity to live a good life. And that's something that's very important. I know that for all of us in this room, that's what the quality of life we want for all our children, because that's the hard work that we do each and every day, not only as a leader, not only as a parent and a grandparent and elders, but, you know, we always work hard each and every day because our elders always teach us that, you know, we're here for the little ones. We're always working for those little ones and those 7 generations to come. You know, First Nations, as we know, are taking the leading role in this and are being innovative and forward-looking in how to ensure our children have what they need. And you as the service coordinators, you know, I have to give my heart and lift you all up for the work that you do. You know, for example, you know, what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing and what I'm experiencing from you firsthand, telling me as the national portfolio holder and leader at the Assembly, your struggles that you're having and facing in your different regions is not all too uncommon, because I'm hearing that in every other region as well. And so I'm encouraging you all today to participate fully, because we're going to have members of Indigenous Services Canada here in the room. They need to hear first and foremost from you directly as the service coordinators who are working at those grassroots level of the plights and the struggles that we're having. And indeed we are, because, you know, all we have to do is look at the new form, right? Everybody will just look, and, you know, there's a little nod I can see around from everybody about the new form and the criteria and everything, and, you know, how you're doing applications, and we're hearing applications are being denied because they're not on letterhead, you know, like little simple things like that. You know, it's just the bureaucracy and the red tape that's being created by Indigenous Services Canada is wrong, especially when it comes to our children. You know, you should never, ever have to, you know, deny services for our children. You know, all I can say is shame on you if you're going to deny services for our children, because, you know, we're the most disadvantaged and marginalized people in this country. We recently had an election. Yes, we have a minority government and such, you know, but we're looking to work. And it was funny because we were on the way from the airport to here to the hotel, and I was talking. I said, well, what are we going to do? You know, how are we going to do this? I said, and, you know, just land like how he said that the Bloc has 30-some seats. I said, maybe we're going to have to reach out to the Bloc Québécois, you know, to position this minority Liberal government to help us when it comes to Jordan's Principle. Same thing with the NDP government. You know, they have 30-plus seats too. We have to start looking at those people as our allies to push this minority government to ensure that Jordan's Principle, as well as the CHRT ruling, as well as early learning and all the social development factors that we talk about, income assistance and everything that's affecting us as First Nations at the ground level when we talk about social development, including this, right? So in your package, everybody, you got an update on accessing Jordan's Principle. It's an orange book. There's also an Indigenous early learning and childcare framework there for information for everybody too as well. I made sure that the staff covered you guys off very well as I'm the national portfolio holder for social development. So it all encompasses all of these different portfolios. And last but not least, we have the First Nations Child and Family Caring Society and the Assembly of First Nations versus Canada on the CHRT ruling. And I want to acknowledge and lift up this wonderful champion that we have here, Cindy Blackstock. Please stand up, Cindy, and let everybody know you're here. You know, you see Cindy at the forefront when we talk about that battle when we have for our First Nations children. And, you know, for myself as a national portfolio holder, I'm always standing behind her and always supporting her in that work and what we do at the Assembly as a partner with the Caring Society to ensure to find justice for our children. So, you know, in saying that, I just want to say to everybody, please share the struggles, the wrongs that you're seeing there in your communities. You know, I spoke to one of our service coordinators from northern Saskatchewan last night, and they're talking about, you know, the stress of having hundreds of cases in 7 communities and only having one person do that. And I said, holy smokes, that just sounds like child welfare and what's doing and how our people are burning out as CFS workers because of the caseload. So it's almost like we're being set up for failure again. So we have to ensure as leaders and service coordinators that we nip this in the bud right now, because we have Indigenous Service Canada in the room. We have to position and make the government aware of the struggles and the plights that we're facing as First Nations in each of the respected regions. Please bring that information forward. If you have time, you know, take me aside. Tell me personally what's happening in your region as well too, because I bring those messages forward at that national table when I do engage with the minister and such. So I want to thank everybody. There's a lot of work that we have in the next couple days. There's a lot of information here for everybody. I want to thank Matt. Matt's going to be our master of ceremonies, and he'll look after us in a good way the next couple days. He's always been there for us at the assembly when we hold such gatherings as that. So thank you, everybody. Again, acknowledge the territory, the elder, the drum group, and everybody in this room. Have a good day. Here goes it.
Miigwech, Kevin, I'm already a half hour behind. I'm failing miserably. Just a little bit of the objectives, as they would say. I've gathered you all here today to provide an opportunity for service coordinators from different regions to connect with each other, share promising practices, and learn from the experiences of other service coordinators. Provide an opportunity for service coordinators and focal points to network and connect in an effort to build strong relationships to best serve First Nations children and families. Provide an opportunity for service coordinators to share the challenges they are experiencing and as they assist families through Jordan's Principles process. Gather to celebrate Jordan River Anderson's life and legacy and honor his spirit through the ongoing and important work that is done every day by those gathered here. You'll notice that the agenda is structured with panels and then breakout groups or tabletop discussions. And really the focus for our 2 days is to get you participating and get your voice heard as much as possible. So the challenge is space and volume, and perhaps, we do have another room. We're going to see if we can have availability maybe to try to lower the volume in each of the rooms. But tabletop work, the people you're sitting with are probably going to be working with them for the next 2 days. I only have one just one to mention that we're being webcast. So if you're up here, make sure you've fixed your hair and let it flow. I used to call it rules of engagement, but sound too warlike. So I thought that principles in terms of a principle how we would operate for 2 days. And I only have one, and that's respect. Respect yourself, take care of yourself. There is water over here. There's probably coffee next door. Washrooms are out here to the right. Straight out, minus 20 degrees if you need a shock to wake yourself up. Take care of yourself. Be here, be present, be ready to participate. Respect others. Turn your cell phones off, one conversation at a time. We're trying to get as many perspectives as possible. And we'll notice that we'll have tables with note takers, tables without. We're trying to get as many. We're trying to track as much of the conversations as we can. The worksheets are there. You have the option to fill it out as a group. You can take a worksheet for yourself, fill it out as a community. In terms of respecting others, I would ask that you grab a headset for translation. We do have Francophone and unilingual Francophone delegates who might ask questions in French, and I think it's important that everyone understand the question and also the response. So please take the time to grab a translation set. And the last thing is that I have to show enormous discipline up here myself, sitting at this table with no skirt. No scratching, no rude gestures, anything like that could be seen by the group. So maybe I'll get a skirt put up there so I don't have to be so self-disciplined. So that's kind of our agenda. I don't know if you've noticed if any questions or concerns or worries about our agenda. I think that we're really focusing on getting your perspective as much as possible. If you have issues or concerns about getting your voice heard, please let me know, and we'll make sure we'll try to get that, we'll settle with that, or we'll try to make sure you have an opportunity to be heard. Your ISK people are here, and they will be presenting, and you'll have opportunities to have questions with them. I'm also told that they have brought their laptops, that if you have specific questions around specific clients, you can approach them and get those things solved, perhaps in the next room next door. So in the open forum, you don't have to ask any specific questions about any specific client. They are here to help you if you have those questions individually. With that, I'd like to introduce our keynote, who's Dr. Cindy Blackstock, the Executive Director of First Nations Child and Family Caring Society of Canada and Professor of School of Social Work, McGill University. I was going to read her bio, but we're already half hour short, and we know Cindy, so please help me welcome Dr. Cindy Blackstock.
So it's a great honor to be here on Kahnawake territory, and I want to thank the elder for the teachings and the drum. And I want all of us to support Regional Chief Ghislain Picard in making compliance with the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal our top priority for this government, right? Jordan deserves it. You know, the elder talked about roots, and for me, Jordan's principle is not a program. It's not even a legal principle. It's something far more important to that. It's a sacred responsibility. And you're all going to see the film tonight. And one of the things that I really look at this film by Elenice Obamsawinez is an introduction of Jordan to so many people who have not had the opportunity to meet this loving spirit, his family, and his community. And one of the people who work with Jordan is actually here, and that is Madeline Gamblin from Norway House Cree Nation. And you'll see her in the film, but if you want to know more about Jordan and his family and the great work that Norway House Cree Nation has done, I really recommend that you speak to her. And is there any other folks here from Norway House? Yes, there is one. He's just too shy. So, you know, we all owe a debt of gratitude to Norway House Cree Nation. And with that, I'd like to ask you one favor, and that is not to use the acronym JP. I know that that has been popular, it's easy to say, but it is really important that we at least honor this little boy's spirit by saying his full name at every opportunity. At least in my tradition, that is a way of honoring and calling the spirit. And so let's all pledge to say Jordan's principle. And when we do, to have images of this lovely little boy and the legacy and his spirit that continues to touch all of our lives. So with that, I'm going to take you through a bit of a tour of what's happening with Jordan's principle. I know all of you are working with it every single day, but I want to kind of show you why it's so important, more than just the children's work that you're doing. And that is, there is kind of a magic bullet in addressing all kinds of wide-sweeping disadvantage, everything from reducing cardiac disease, diabetes, to reducing incarceration rates, to reducing children in care, to uplifting the economy, uplifting education, and that magic bullet is reducing inequalities in your own country. So reducing inequality has all of those different effects, and that's why the work of Regional Chief Hart is so important regarding children. And this is a report that we just released at the Pan American Health Organization. And in that report, it takes the determinants of health, but the determinants of health are very Western. And what we tried to do is really focus on Indigenous peoples. And so one of the things that this report does is learns from the elders of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit communities in Canada, but other Indigenous peoples across the Americas. It incorporates the land as a determinant of health. Not just climate crises, because that's a Western understanding, is really they just look at it when it's a threat to them, but really the source of life, that source of memory, that source of spirit, and the responsibilities that we have to the land. So you can check out that report on the PAHO website. When it comes to children, Canada does not invest as governments very much in kids at all, even though they're the very best investment. For every dollar Canada spends in children, it can expect to save $18 US downstream. People of my generation are a terrible investment, right? We're not a good investment for public money. And yet governments in Canada still have not got the message. And when you look at overall, how much Canada, time and money Canada's government spend on children proportionate to their wealth, we rank 49th in the world. And if you look at the specific measure of legislation and government budgets, that would be in your province, your territory, and federally, we are 138th in the world. So when governments say they're doing everything they can for kids, that's clearly not the case. That's clearly not the case. And this comes out every year, usually around the summertime. It's by the Kids' Rights Index. And that group is really one of the most respected child rights organizations in the world. In just a few days, we are going to be having the 30th anniversary of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. That'll happen on November 20th. And I hope all of you are going to join with all of us in supporting the Spirit Bear Plan that was passed by the Chiefs in Assembly in 2017. Because if we're successful at fully implementing Jordan's Principle, and even if we're successful at implementing all the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal orders on child welfare, our kids and our families will continue to be disadvantaged because of the lack of housing, clean water, early childhood programs, youth programs, mental health, all those areas. We need to get a program to get rid of all those inequities. Spirit Bear Plan has two key functions. One is, why isn't the government of Canada to do better when it knows better? So it needs to have an external evaluation to suss out what are those colonial ways of thinking that have just become normalized in a department, and then how do we change those so that when good community solutions are coming forward, that they actually get implemented by the government. Second part, get the parliamentary budget officer to cost out all of the inequalities in every single area affecting First Nations kids and their families. And then develop something like the Marshall Plan after the Second World War to get rid of them all, right? We have never had a comprehensive plan. We deal with education over here, then child welfare over here, and that has the effect of perpetuating inequality. So that's why the Spirit Bear Plan is so important, and we should all be pushing for it on November 20th. Which also, by the way, is a day when the government is going to appoint its new cabinet. I won't go through all of this here, but really my take-home message is that the disadvantage that First Nations children and families experience is not because of lack of answers. The answers not only have been there, they've been presented to the government over decades, and indeed over a century. And the government has just simply not implemented those solutions. Everything from Dr. Peter Henderson Bryce's report about the deaths of kids 112 years ago, to, of course, the great work that was done on the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples, the TRC, and, of course, the recommendations from the Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls report. There's a whole pile of these recommendations. We just got to get to implementing them. These are the orders that Regional Chief Ghislaine Picard and Regional Chief Hart were talking about. And just now, I just want to recognize, people often see me up at these things, but for over 20 years, I've had the honor of working with Jonathan Thompson at the AFN and all the AFN staff, and I just really want to recognize them because they have been just extraordinary through this 20-year battle. So join me in applauding for them because they don't get the recognition they deserve. So these are the orders that are on the books. There are more to come. And what you can see here is it's really like when we hear the government say, well, yes, we believe in reconciliation. No, yes, of course, we know kids are sacred. But when you actually hold them accountable for it, it's very hard for them to actually take that responsibility. And even despite these legal orders from their own courts, they're still fighting, right? They're not just resisting, they are fighting against many of these orders. This is the actual decision from 2016. Has anyone read that decision? I would really recommend everybody does. And for those of you who find legal decisions a bit boring, because they sometimes are, you can go on to fnwitness.ca, and we actually have a little summary of it there. And I think it's really important. This is a landmark decision. It actually is the first time in a Western industrialized world that there has been any Western government that's been held accountable for its current treatment of First Nations kids under a legal order, right? This isn't like in the past we harmed these kids and now we're going to pay out. This is actually how do we stop this from happening? How do we stop Canada's repeat offender behavior against First Nations children? Because that's what they have been. And so that sets the pathway for all of this. Now with Jordan's Principle, it passed through the House unanimously in 2007. Madeleine was there, and so was Jordan's father, Ernest Anderson, and his sister, Jerlene Anderson, or Jerlene Sullivan now. They were all there, and I remember what Ernest Anderson said. He said, "Don't let the good being done in my son's name today just be a moral victory." And yet that's exactly what it became. The government took this sacred gift by this little boy of equity, culturally based equity, and turned it into something that was so narrow, it became discriminatory. No child ever qualified. And yet, I just want to share a couple of the exhibits that we filed at the tribunal. It wasn't because the government didn't know that there were gaps in services and that kids were being denied. This is actually written by federal government employees in Manitoba region. And it sets out examples. And in this case, it's saying if you have a child with a wheelchair, a lift, and a stroller that's non-Indigenous, they'll get all those things when medical professionals say it's required. But if you're First Nations, you get one of those pieces of equipment every 5 years, which means it would take for a First Nations child 15 years to get what non-Indigenous kids would get as a matter of course. So this wasn't me writing it or AFN writing it or any First Nation writing it. This is inside of the bureaucracy, right? So they clearly knew that kids were being left out. This is the one that causes me the most concern. It is an award. This was given out, Michael Wernick was then the deputy minister of INAC, I still called INAC too. And they were, at this time, saying, no, there's 0 Jordan's Principle cases. They were actually litigating against the courageous Marina Beadle from Pictou Landing First Nation, who was suing Canada for its failure to recognize the needs of her son Jeremy and Jordan's Principle. And in all of that, we're at the tribunal. In all of that, the federal government gives the people who are saying no to those children and those families the highest award in the public service. That's the nominations form for the Deputy Minister's Award. So it's important for us to understand this. I know this is not easy to hear or easy to see, but I do not believe that people working in the public service are evil people. What I do believe is too often their own moral good becomes replaced by the requirements of the system. And people are not given the moral space to speak out and challenge and be insubordinate to discrimination that's happening in the program. And that's part of what we need to support our federal colleagues in doing. And when they need our support, whether it be by court order or by standing with them as they talk to supervisors, we need to break this pattern. It's absolutely essential. So thanks to Jordan and all the work of everyone, and I do mean, and also I want to recognize the prayers of people because I really think this case in many ways was spiritually guided. We're now at a point where you guys are actually in this room. You know, I think in your presence really is an honoring of Jordan. I know for the family, Jerlene was actually threatening to walk from Winnipeg General Hospital down to the AFN one year just because she thought someone has to do something in the dead of winter, right? But I just want to highlight a couple of areas that we found that have some bumps in the road in terms of the implementation. You all know that substantive equality applies. That means the service does not need to be available to non-Indigenous kids. But what we've been finding is a series of denials by the federal government on substantive equality, but they don't really tell you why. And we've certainly talked about that at the national table. We've been concerned about that. We want more specific letters on that. And frankly, I think it's really hard to believe that First Nations children, given the disadvantages that we all know about, that anyone could make a reasonable case that they are not eligible for substantive equality. Canada ensures that those conditions of disadvantage are perpetuated by underfunding housing, water, and a whole other array of areas. So this is an area I think that would be good for us to dialogue about and in your experiences on the ground. The other piece is that the application to all public services. We can't buy into the idea that this is only health related. And in fact, Canada spun as part of its PR during the years it was discriminating against Jordan's Principle that this was only for children with disabilities. It includes children with disabilities, but it includes all kids, right? And the other piece that we have to work with is the on and off reserve. So right now, the orders say all First Nations children, but Canada has made the choice to not extend Jordan's Principle to non-status First Nations children who are recognized by their nations but are resident off reserve. The Caring Society rejects that definition. We do not go by the Indian Act. We go by the membership of the First Nation. And if that child is recognized as being a member of the First Nation, they should be eligible for Jordan's Principal Services. That is one of the orders that we're waiting for from the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal. And that will have huge implications, right, for Canada. But here's the piece, is that Canada should not be saying, we've only got this amount of money. Because this legal requirement asks them to spend whatever's required, right? And the amount of money they're spending is because of the depth of discrimination that First Nations kids have experienced. And we get a sense of that with the over 250,000 services and products that have been gifted to children from Jordan Spirit and his family over this last year alone. So remember, from 2007 to really the middle of 2016, the Fed said there are no Jordan's Principal cases. Well, that gives us a little sense of how much the need was out there during that period of time. The time frames are also problematic, particularly in Ontario when it comes to payment, right? So sometimes the service will be approved, but the check will not be there for the family for sometimes weeks and months on end. And that can put their service relationship with a respite care provider or someone else at risk. So I'm hoping you will dialogue about that, about what that's really looking like in your region. There are three types of Jordan's Principal cases: individual, group. We've been hearing concerns about group cases. In fact, the Nagda-Windham Child and Family Services has filed a judicial review against Canada for its failure to approve a group Jordan's Principal case. It wasn't a first application. They'd actually offered this program, been able to demonstrate how it had positive effects for families, but then Canada would not renew it. So we've been seeing some backpedaling, it feels like, on a group side, and I was just talking quickly with the regional chief. He's noted it in his region too. I think that's something that we really have to talk about here, about how to ensure these group cases really are supported in meeting the multiple needs of children in communities. There shouldn't be all this red tape. What we've been seeing is Canada wanting, like, if you have 300 kids in your group, documentation on each of the 300 kids. Well, that's not going to work, right? Here is the 24-hour line. I really recommend that we get out into our communities, our daycares, let parents know that these 24-hour lines exist, because it's really critical, especially in urgent cases. Remember, for urgent cases, they have 12 hours to make the determination, and even if that 12 hours would put that child at risk, they have to do it right on the spot, right? And they have somebody on call now who can approve Jordan's Principal cases on the call line. So if you have a child with a mental health issue, for example, and they need something ASAP, then make sure you use the word, it's an urgent case. Urgent means it's a reasonable likelihood that the child will experience some irrevocable harm in the next 12 hours. That's what it means. So when you call the focal point, or when you call the line, if you're in that situation, say clearly, this is an urgent case, and we require an immediate response, okay? Here are the orders that were still under reserve at the tribunal. So we've had 10 orders in total by the tribunal. We are waiting for 4 more, right? So we'll be up to 14 orders here. And that's not including the ones that we're contemplating right now. But the first one is really important for Jordan's Principal, particularly group cases, and that's capital. Some of you are wanting to provide, say, occupational therapy for kids in your community, but there's no place to provide it. So Canada is refusing to fund capital right now. The Assembly of First Nations and the Caring Society both don't agree with that position. We've had a hearing on capital, and we're waiting for the decision. So yeah, you need it, right? Definition of a First Nations child off reserve. That is a big decision for the tribunal to be taking on. And they want to respect First Nations' inherent jurisdiction, as do we. But what I don't want to see are some of the cases that we've seen coming forward, where we had a baby who was recognized by her First Nation. Her mom was status, her grandma was status. They always went to the community for ceremonies and to meet with family. But Canada denied that child transportation money to go and get a life-saving scan. What we had to do in that situation as a caring society, thanks to Spirit Bear's popularity, we have books, and we use that money to pay for the mom's travel so that the child could get the scan. But that was denied just because the child didn't have status, right? Like, that's ridiculous. And so we say that needs to be challenged. Thankfully, right now, there is an order before the tribunal, an existing order, that non-status kids recognized by their communities in urgent situations are eligible for Jordan's Principle. We just want to extend that to children who are not in urgent situations. The other two orders are, retention of jurisdiction. The feds want out of the tribunal. They say, leave it to us, trust us. We're going to be able to do the best thing. We say we don't believe you're ready for that yet. So we want the jurisdiction extended. I'm just going to spend a moment on this compensation order. You've heard a lot about it during the federal leadership debates. Under the Canadian Human Rights Act, victims of discrimination are eligible for up to $20,000 for being discriminated against. On top of that, if the discrimination was willful and reckless, that is, you knew about it, you had a solution to fix it, and you chose not to, then there's an additional penalty of up to $20,000 per victim. Dating back to 2014, when we did our final arguments in this case, Canada's official position was we don't owe anything. We tried to talk to Canada to negotiate a settlement. They refused to talk. They said they wanted to litigate it. That we got the official notification in December 2018. So there was a mini trial in the spring of this year. This is well before the election, I want to emphasize this. Canada's official position was we don't owe anything to these victims. Why? Well, they say this is a systemic case. And if we wanted individual damages for the families and the children, then we ought to have called them to testify about the impacts of the discrimination on them. We said that was ridiculous. We're not going to bring 5- and 6-year-olds to the stand to talk about the trauma that they experience being separated from their families or being, in some cases, where children have passed away. The tribunal rejected those arguments by Canada, and in September ordered Canada to pay maximum damages to this group of victims. Canada then sat on that decision, and what that order says is they need to talk to the AFN and Caring Society to develop a process for distributing the money. That's all they're ordered to do right now. And then to file that with the tribunal on the 10th of December, and then the tribunal will then make the order for the checks to start to flow. On October 4th, Canada filed an application for a stay and an appeal. So they want to put the tribunal's order on hold. They don't want to talk to the AFN or the Caring Society on any kind of process. They want that decision put on hold, and then they want to pursue their judicial review, which is to completely quash any financial compensation. It doesn't say we want to take time to get this right. It doesn't say we want to take time to, quote, as they like to say, talk to partners. It says they want to completely quash the application for any kind of compensation. That's consistent with their previous positions. So tomorrow, I have to leave this afternoon to go back to Ottawa because we have to cross-examine one of Canada's witnesses. And it will go to trial on the stay application on the 25th and 26th of November. The Aboriginal People's Television Network has applied to cover it. All the parties have said yes. Canada, to their credit, has also consented. So I'm hoping that it'll be available to all of you to watch. But if you get questions about compensation right now, there's a handout that AFN has made in your bucket. There's no money flowing right now. We're hoping to quash Canada's stay application and then later defeat them on their judicial review. But I think Canada, at least at this point, is really ramping up to fight to the end. So we'll see where things go. That's the judicial review. You may have heard Prime Minister Trudeau in both the French and English debates saying that they are supporting compensation. Well, that's not reflected in their legal positions at all. In fact, 4 days after the election, we had a case conference in the federal court, and Canada doubled down on its legal submissions to quash all financial compensation. There is a class action that was filed by a courageous former Youth in Care, Xavier Moucham, and of course our wonderful Marina Beadle. That's separate and apart from this case. And I need to emphasize this if you're asked this question. There's nothing under the Canadian Human Rights Act that if a person receives damages under that act, that they are not eligible for damages under a class action. It's a yes and proposition, right? So it's not an either or thing. And Canada has not agreed to certify the class action. So it's in the very earliest stages, and we are hearing that Canada plans to fight the certification of the class action. So this whole thing around we're in discussions on settlement, well, they certainly haven't been ringing our phone. I don't know who they're calling. A word on C-92, because this thing is going to hit us on January 1st, 2020. There's a lot of uncertainty about this thing, and there is zero transition plan by the federal government. There are no regulations, and there is also no money. This is an analysis by 5 law professors, Indigenous law professors at the Yellowhead Institute. I really recommend you take a read of it. It's very helpful. It's done in a user-friendly kind of way. And I wanted to just focus a bit on the money, because that's something that I know a little bit more about. I'm not an expert in jurisdiction. But on the money side, the money for First Nations Child and Family Service agencies under the federal regime is restricted by the federal government to provincial and territorially delegated agencies. So if there is an agency today that as of January 1st goes under First Nations law, that money will not transfer over. If there is an agency operating under provincial or territorial law on December 31st of this year, the next day, the First Nation kicks in a law and says provincial and territorial child welfare legislation no longer apply. That agency funding will not follow, because the program is restricted to territorial and provincially delegated agencies. That is an important thing for you to know. It's also important for First Nations to know. The federal government has been referring First Nations to a fund called the CWJI Fund, Child Welfare Jurisdiction Initiative. We have received confirmation that all of the money under that pot of those funds has been allocated for this year. It's also been fully allocated for next year. So there's nothing there if you're a First Nation and you want to develop your own laws or operate under your own laws. And there is also no other pool. And so what we're recommending to First Nations right now is, if you want to begin looking at your own laws, is negotiate the funding outside of triggering that coordination agreement. There's a coordination agreement under C-92 that says you tell the province and the feds that you want to draw down your own law, and then during that year, you can discuss funding. But after the year happens, your laws take effect. Well, that's good, except you may have no money to operate them. So what we recommend is you begin the funding discussions outside of triggering that coordination agreement. That's really important, because you don't want to be left in a situation where you have your own laws and no money to operate this and meet the needs of kids, right? The other thing is, you need to understand it's within this context where Canada said in C-92 we're going to deal with the money later, despite every First Nation witness saying that this is key. When Canada said it was dealing with it later, remember all those orders that we've had on the CHRT? And they're still fighting capital and those kinds of things. So that's with the strength of legal orders and the support of all First Nations across the country. Can you imagine if a single First Nation sat across the table with them? And they may or may not have the level of knowledge and time about this particular issue. I think it's really, really rolling the dice if you think you can get a funding agreement with Canada or the provinces within a year. The standards will take effect as of January 1st, and that's good news for some of you who don't have strong provincial jurisdiction or legislation in these areas. So the standards on cultural continuity, best interests of the child, all of that takes effect as of the first day of January. What's not clear is what courts are going to hear this. In fact, in some regions, we're hearing that provincial courts are saying we don't have jurisdiction to hear these cases, which means where does it go? We don't know. I'd recommend that you reach out to your judiciary and figure this out before January 31st. The other thing that is unclear is where's the money for fulfilling these standards? So these standards will apply to the provincial workers as well as to agency workers. One of the sections in there is socioeconomic conditions. You cannot remove for poverty. Well, that's really easy to say unless you're working in a First Nation where there's a huge housing crisis and no water. And families are struggling with those things. Canada has not committed any money to remediate those social conditions. So you're going to end up in a situation where the law is going to require you not to remove because of poverty. None of us would want to do that, but the reality is that poverty is a driver of child maltreatment because families are in situations where they can't meet basic needs. And that's why the Spirit Bear Plan is so essential, right? So I would read up on C92. There's lots of unknowns. I'm not anyone who tells you that they have got all this figured out is selling you snake oil. We're all asking questions about it now. I just wanted to put it on the table because it's happening soon. It will impact our kids, and we don't know very much about it, right? So do press your federal officials to come up with some kind of plan, transition plan for this thing. Like, they need to start working on it now. Jonathan and I have met with the deputy minister. We tried to say, look, like, get on this, but things are going slowly. Spirit Bear is going to have a new book out. Watch for that at the AFN. And this one is going to be about honoring memories, planting dreams, about residential school survivors and the roles that kids have played in honoring them, and also on First Nations, Métis, and Inuit veterans and the important honoring role we have for them. So watch out for that. All these books tell about the stories about how real kids came together to deal with injustices. And I'm hoping on the 25th and 26th that we have more kids. They've already asked if they can come to the hearings. So we just need to find a courtroom, and I'm sure you're going to see a lot more kids at those courtrooms. There's 7 free ways to make a difference. We have the website fnwitness.ca. We also have jordansprinciple.ca. Those are all available. All the legal information is posted up there. We try to post at least summaries in both official languages. So do check all that information out. But most importantly, I think one of the things that we need to get away from in this dialogue around Jordan's Principle is it is our shared work with the government to ensure that Jordan's spirit is honored. And that means we need to have the courageous conversations about accountability. When things are not going well, when there's lots of red tape, we need to be holding them accountable to these legal orders, but more importantly to Jordan's spirit. So I want to thank you for having me. I'm going to step off the stage because you have a lot, you're trying to catch up on time. And do watch this film tonight, and as you do, say a little prayer for Jordan and his family this night.
A little gift for you, Cindy.
Oh,
Any questions?
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's take a break. Let's take 15 minutes. Let our ISK partners take it all in for 15 minutes. Let's reconvene at 10:02 or 5:02. Grab your translation devices, grab a coffee. Break is next door, same place we had breakfast. Back here at 5:02. Thank you. Winburn, you haven't reconvened. So grab your coffee, grab dried fruit and a gummy bear, grab your translation devices, and reconvene, please. Of course, if you're bilingue, then you don't need a translation device, but do grab your translation devices. We are encouraging our participants to share their questions in the language of their choice. Is the bear sticking around or is he leaving? Oh, you're coming up here? You're bringing the bear with you? Come on up. So Christina, Tanya, and Courtney. Are they all here? Hi, Christina. Your hands are full. You want to put them here? You take my spot. Who else is with you? Courtney?
Tanya and Courtney. There's
Courtney, why don't you come join Christina up here at the table? Might as well. I'll get out of the way, so I'll go at the end. Grab your laptop, grab some participants while you're out there, rustle me up some participants.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm going to actually say that I'm going to ask for the questions. I'm going to be available next week. Which I think this week probably will. They're not super. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
So Christina Reed is the Executive Director, Jordan's Principal, Indigenous Services Canada. En français, directrice exécutive, Principe de Jardin, Service aux Autochtones Canada. Okay, everybody, where are yous? Where yous? Come on back. Someone go out there and rustle me up some participants. So what I'm going to try to do is catch up on a little bit of time, because as I said, we want to get you into your breakout sessions. Christina's here, Tanya's here, Courtney's here. We'll ask Christina Reed to come make her presentation. Please help me welcome Christina Reed.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Bonjour, Ani, Sago, Wache. I don't know if the elder is still here, but I wanted to gift him with tobacco. Is there somebody here from the community that I can gift this tobacco to? Sorry. I would like to begin by acknowledging and thanking our elder, Charles Patton, for his wisdom. I would also like to acknowledge the sacred items in the room. I would also like to acknowledge Cinnabear. So some of you might have seen Cinnabear earlier today, and he or she was gifted to us by the Caring Society. So Cinnabear sits in national headquarters in either my office, Steve Turney's office, or in Valerie Gideon's office for the most part. Montreal is historically known as the gathering place for many First Nations, so it seems meaningful that so many communities are represented here today by Jordan's Principal Service Coordinators, staff from the Assembly of First Nations, and the First Nations Caring Society, as well as members of ISK. So at this time, I would like the focal points to stand up and just wave a hand so everybody knows who the focal points are in the room. There's more than two. Come on, guys, don't be shy. This event is really based on networking, so it's really important for us to be active here and be available. So after my presentation, I will be available in the next room with my assistant, Jenny, to take any questions or concerns or provide any feedback. I would like to thank the Assembly of First Nations and the Regional Chief Picard and Regional Chief Harp for their invitation to have staff from Jordan's Principal join the meeting with service coordinators to learn from each other. Unfortunately, Valerie Gideon sends her regrets. I believe she's in consultation with astronauts today. I do not think it has anything to Jordan's Principal. I don't think we're sending anybody to Mars as of right now. I would also like to acknowledge the work and dedication of Dr. Cindy Blackstock for sharing her views with us. As an Indigenous woman myself, I feel that Dr. Blackstock and I share two things in common: the fierce love for our children, and secondly, that I also wanted an easy bake oven growing up. My name is Christina Reed, and my traditional name is Braveheart Woman. I am the Executive Director of Jordan's Principal, and I'm truly honored and humbled to be here with you today. I've been in the role now for 2 months and continue to learn and grow. I am fortunate to be surrounded by like-minded people who really see the good, clean work in the work that we do. It's not just a job, it's a lifestyle. I was raised in southwestern Ontario. I'm a band member of the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte. I'm truly proud of my culture. Like many, my mother was part of the 60 Scoop and taken away from her biological family at birth. She was placed in a non-Indigenous family, and she was raised growing up like she didn't belong anywhere. She reconnected with her family as a young adult, but unfortunately my mom passed away at a young age. But one thing is certain, my mom's legacy lives within her children. Prior to joining Jordan's Principal, I was the Executive Director of an Indigenous Wellbeing Society. So I truly understand what it's like to work on the ground, work in communities, and be with people who have gone through a lot of difficult times. Some people ask why I joined the federal government, and that's an excellent question. This decision was not easy. However, I do believe I made the right decision 2 months in. I came because I believe that there's room for growth and change within. As the elder talked about earlier today, we're all here for a reason. Indigenous Services Canada strives to work collaboratively with partners to improve access to high-quality services for First Nation, Inuit, Métis peoples. Our vision is to support and empower Indigenous peoples to independently deliver services and address the socioeconomic conditions in their communities. A number of programs and services support Indigenous people across Canada. A few that you might deal with are health care services and non-insured benefits, elementary and secondary education. There has been a great deal of feedback on these programs, and we recognize and acknowledge the gaps that do exist. And we're working very hard to make things change. To date, more than 478,000 requests have been approved thanks to the tremendous work of the service coordinators and our regional focal points. More than $670 million was committed for the first 3 years since the CHRT decision to immediately address the health, social, and educational services, supports, and products through Jordan's Principal. Most recently, through Budget 2019, an additional $1.2 billion over 3 years has been announced for Jordan's Principal. Right now, I would ask that Dr. John Paul come up, talk about the data. Thank you. So John Paul is the manager of data at headquarters. you want to just take over here?
I wanted to see the table from this. Yeah. Sorry, I have to turn my back. Yeah, that'll be better. Yeah, hello. Yeah, my name is John Paul. I'm going to speak about the data that we have collected over the past 3 weeks. When you look on the map, so far we have approved over 478,342 product and services. These are product and services. We are not saying they are unique individual or unique children. They are product and services like, for example, if you take services like educational assistance, you take something like tutoring services, you take something like allied health services. These are services, product and services, computer, laptop. Those are things we are talking about, not individual children. So from July 2016 up to September 2019, we have approved 478,342 products and services across the regions in Canada, meaning from Manitoba, Atlantic, BC, and the rest. Now, when you look on your right side, that graph tells you the approved individual product and services. That means that those are product and services requested directly through Indigenous Services Canada. As Dr. Cindy have mentioned, that there are three ways that you can make a request. You can either make it through individual, you can make it through group, and you can make it through the retro payment. So if you look at it, we break it down by the individual request and the group request. And you can see that in terms of an individual request, a medical transportation is one of the things that is often requested. And if you look at the group, we are talking about mental health. And the other graph that is in purple, you can look at the number of products and services we have approved over the years, over the 4 fiscal years. So in 2016-17, we have approved 4,940. 2017-18, the number has increased. We have approved almost double we have approved a lot. If you look at 2018-19, we have approved almost double of that number. In September, only a quarter of this two quarters of this fiscal year, we have approved 256,179. So the number of products and services that we are approving is increasing significantly. If you look at the other graph, the last graph on the bottom, it shows you only in this fiscal year, individual requests, month-by-month comparison. If you look at April, you can see we have, last fiscal year we have approved 1,094. This fiscal year we have approved 1,540, almost 40% increase. And if you look month by month up to September, you can see that the percentage increase in some of the months are more than 100%. So in terms of the number of products and services that we are approving, it has increased tremendously. Thank you.
Thank you, John Paul. Canada has made an ongoing commitment to the inclusive national engagement process that yields a sustainable, long-term approach to ensure First Nations children have access to services and supports they need. Regional experience and knowledge has helped us guide the work. We are currently investing in an internal system. For example, our business intelligence team, called Synergy in Action, has created an internal case management specific to Jordan's Principle. This system will eventually create efficiencies and allow us to respond to requests more effectively, which means quicker. The new case management system will also be able to provide us with effective data collection so that we can ensure that every First Nation child has the opportunity to have their needs met. Our children definitely deserve the best. We are in the midst of approving an appeals process, which is outside of the federal government. We are looking to hire consultants to review appeals and provide recommendations. Most of all, we recognize the regional diversity and want to build on those differences to serve the community to the best of our ability. We welcome suggestions and constructive criticism, always. This is how we grow and build for a better tomorrow. Being in the field, I can definitely relate to some of the complexities and dedication it takes. It is even more difficult when you work in the community that you service. I would like to take this opportunity to express my appreciation to all of you for your hard work. It is hard work. Also to your teams for putting in the long hours. I thank you for the early mornings and late nights. I also want to acknowledge your families that support the hard work, the clean work that you do. As discussed, we are committed to removing barriers that exist. As we work through these barriers, we have brought you a few handouts to help you along the way. We'll leave the handouts. I believe they're going to be sent to you in as a package, and I'll let the girls here continue with that. In the morning, I smudge. Many of you know that this involves purification of the mind, body, and spirit. I feel that it grants me the opportunity to see things in a different way, listen with a good mind, and really hear what individuals are saying. I do believe it allows me to stay focused also. I would like to take this opportunity to listen to your stories and hear your feedback on Jordan's Principle. In my travels, I have learned that the system is definitely not perfect. However, listening and hearing is what individuals are experiencing allows us to tweak our practices to serve you better, the community, and most importantly, the children and youth. They're our future. Thank you. So I think we're running out of time. So what do you want to do? Would you like me to ask questions, or do you want me to move into the next room?
No, we'll stay here for now, and we'll ask everyone else up, and then we'll see if they're...
Okay, they're going to do the SOPs. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. What I'd like to do is go through the INAC or ISC presentations and then open the floor if there are any clarifications, and then we'll break into breakout rooms. So I'm trying to catch up a little bit. So with that, I will invite Tanya Nancaro and Courtney Spence to take us through our next presentation. Please help me welcome.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Tanya Nancaro. I'm a senior policy analyst with the National Jordan's Principle team. It's really great to see everybody here today. This is my colleague, Courtney Spencer.
Hi, I'm Courtney. I work with the review team at the national office. So a few of you have asked me about that this morning, getting to know you. So when your files are escalated, that's our team gets to review that.
So we're thrilled to be here with you today on Kanien'kehá:ka territory. I would like to thank our elder for really setting the tone of the meeting and his words and teachings. And thank you to the regional chiefs and the Assembly of First Nations for inviting us here today and to discuss the Jordan's Principle standard operating procedures. Do we have so whoever is controlling the slides, is that me? Okay, great. Thanks. So this morning, we would like to provide you with some background on how the standard operating procedures, or the SOP as we call them, were developed. And as well, we'll also go over some of the important concepts from the SOP to ground you in the foundations of Jordan's Principle implementation with the hopes of making things easier when processing requests. So the SOP has been developed based on the orders of the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal, or the CHRT, with input from members of the Jordan's Principle Operations Committee, or JPOC, and from Indigenous Services Canada focal points. There's been 3 revisions of the SOP since May 2018, and the newest version was implemented just a couple weeks ago, October 29th. And hopefully you have a copy. If not, it will be sent to you. The SOP is an evergreen document, which means it will continue to change as the implementation of Jordan's Principle evolves. So we're so excited for this inaugural meeting between focal points and service coordinators on a national scale. We recognize that your expertise and in working with families and in communities, in organizations in communities is incredibly valuable, and we want to learn from your knowledge and your promising practices. So we very much see this as an opportunity to hear from you in the table talk session right after. We're going to be available here for the rest of the day and this evening, so please do come and talk to us and ask questions and tell us your stories. We're here to listen. And also, we hope that this information will help to equip you with the tools you need for your work. Okay, so why an SOP? So we've put together a set of standard operating procedures so that children across Canada would receive a similar experience when accessing Jordan's Principle funding. We found it important to create consistency among focal points in how we do things, while at the same time recognizing regional differences may require different solutions. As I mentioned, the SOP is founded on the CHRT rulings on Jordan's Principle and are very important to maintain our compliance. So all of the topics that we will discuss today are found in the Standard Operating Procedures document. As we go through the material, I encourage you to jot down any topics that you would like to read up about in the SOP or have more explanation on, or see developed in a more user-friendly format for your work. So let's get started. This is the, just before we go into the topics, just to quickly mention, there's an annual review cycle for the SOP. It's once per year we receive feedback from JPOC and from the regional focal point teams. I won't go into details here, but just the main takeaway from this slide is that that we receive feedback in February, we work to update it, and then implement it, and then focus the rest of the time on knowledge sharing and training. So as this is a new process, we look forward to working with you starting today and into the future to incorporate your feedback into the SOP so that these processes get easier and easier as we work on this together. So starting on the sections of the SOP, we're not going to go into all of them as it is a very lengthy document. But I'll just start a little bit about from the CHRT. Jordan's Principle is a legal principle designed to address gaps in government services, in discrimination that can lead to delay, disruption, or denial of services to First Nations children. Section 4.1 in the SOP outlines the eligibility criteria for Jordan's Principle. So as you can see, the criteria in the SOP does go into specifics so that it is clear to staff who is eligible for Jordan's Principle. So it's a little bit different than what you'll see on the website. These criteria are updated as we continue to seek new policy authorities to expand our definition and as new orders from the CHRT are handed down. And so for the purposes of Jordan's Principle, a child is an individual under the age of majority within their province or territory. And in section 4.1.6, there is a table that states the age of majority for each province and territory. So before I hand it over to Courtney, just talk a little bit about the CHRT orders. So in terms of processing requests and based on the orders, Jordan's Principle requests are first considered against the normative standard of care. And the normative standard of care, Dr. Blackstock mentioned it, is what services and supports are available to all other children in your provinces and territory, or territory. If the request is within the normative standard of care, it can be funded under Jordan's Principle. When a service is beyond the normative standard of care, the government was ordered to still evaluate the individual needs of the child to determine if the requested service should be provided to ensure substantive equality, to ensure culturally appropriate service provision, and or to safeguard the best interest of the child. So these are the foundational concepts in which we work in Jordan's principal implementation. And now Courtney will go and talk about those concepts.
Thank you. So we're going to delve into what is beyond normative standard of care and the three lenses that Tanya was speaking of. So first is substantive equality. Substantive equality is a legal principle that aims to achieve true equality. It is one of the three foundations of Jordan's principle and comes directly, as Tanya was saying, from the CHRT orders. This means that for every request above normative standard of care, we look at the individual needs of the child through these three lenses to see if this request can be approved. In the context of Jordan's principle, we recognize that some children need additional support to achieve the same outcomes as other children who have not experienced the same barriers. To do this, we try to understand each child's unique circumstances through the documentation and information we collect with the request. So I'm going to stop there. That's you guys every day on the ground collecting this information, and it's so helpful. And I hope that as we go through this, you can see all this information that you're providing for us, everything that we see at National Office. We're so grateful for it because it really gives the context of these children. So the evaluation of the request must take into account the needs that stem from historical disadvantage and inequities and gaps in culturally informed services. So using this lens shines a light on inequities experienced by First Nations children so they can have the same opportunities as other children in Canada. So some examples of this for consideration would be if a child is in care, if they've experienced a delay in access to service, if there's financial insecurity in the family, if there's historical and intergenerational trauma. So I know you guys are on the ground every day and you're hearing this and you're putting that information, and that's so helpful because when it is beyond normative, we're getting that context of that child and that family so we can review the case. So the next is the guidance of safeguarding the best interests of the child. Another foundational lens through which Jordan's principle requests are considered is through this principle of safeguarding the best interests of the child. The best interest of the child is a key child rights-based principle as stated in Article 3 of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. Safeguarding the best interests of children requires an evaluation of the surrounding context to make sure that patterns of disadvantage are assessed and they are addressed. So the term best interest describes the well-being of a child. This can be determined by a variety of individual circumstances. So when we're looking at this, some examples that we have up are their age, what is their health status, is there a presence or absence of parents, is the child's environment, what is their life experience. So all those things we all take into consideration as service coordinators, focal points, and at National Office. So an example of this would be, let's say a nurse recommends a car seat in order for a child to leave a hospital, and then the family tells you, this is something that we cannot afford. So we know that providing this car seat is going to safeguard the best interests of the child. So that's one example. And as Christina said, as Tanya said, we'd love to talk about this more. We'd love if you have more questions about this. I know it's just a quick overview, but we're here to discuss this. So next, we're going to go over the cultural safety and humility as a service standard. Decisions made under Jordan's principle about the health and well-being of the individuals, of our families, the communities, must recognize the rights for all persons to receive the services in an environment free of racism and discrimination. All of our service standards, when we interact with both staff and the families in our organization, is to deliver culturally safe and appropriate services. Our assistance to the children, to the families, to our communities should follow the principles, and I believe they're up here in blue. So the first is the First Nations Health Authority's policy statement on cultural safety and humility, and the next is the Declaration of Commitment to Advance Cultural Safety and Humility in Health and Wellness. This is the expectation that all of us at Jordan's Principle will work with requesters in a culturally safe way. So what is considered when evaluating and determining a request? So once again, this is service coordinators, focal points, us at national office. These are the things we're all thinking about every day when we're going through these requests. What is the urgency or time sensitivity of the case? I know that Dr. Blackstock had spoken about that a bit earlier. The health and safety risks of the family or children, what's being told to you, what are you hearing? Then you're gathering the information of the description of the product, service, or support, how often it's being required. So is it one time, is it many time, ongoing? So for example of this, there may be a medication that the family is requesting, and you know that it's an ongoing basis, so that's something you would include, that this is going to be an ongoing need for the child. Estimated cost, if this is known. And then we're gathering that supporting documentation for the request, whether that's a prescription, a referral from a health, social, or educational professional. And then once again, it's any other additional information that should be considered to support this request. So the family context, information about the home, community, or educational environment. So if you see things that really relate to this request, adding that in really helps, because once again, if we're beyond normative standard, we're looking for that context of the request. And all of that relates back to those three lenses directly from the CHRT. So next is required information. So this is an outline. I believe we're going to have access to this. It's a tool which outlines the required information. I know there's just a ton on this screen. And this is what you guys are living day to day. But for service coordinators, the top two columns, so on the left, you're seeing that information, you're getting the name and address and all that, and then you're seeing more of that documentation that helps you to think about that lens. So when it's the normative standard, are you getting the prescriptions, and then you're thinking about those three lenses. Is there any other documentation? Is there a social worker that's involved in this child's circle of care? And is there anything else that we can add to that? So all of this information you document and provide as service coordinators helps to give the person reviewing the file the full picture of the circumstances of the child and family and how it relates to the request, to the needs of the child or the children in the request. So next is about consent. So I'm just going to go over individual requests and group requests. So in individual requests, in order to collect sensitive personal information about the identified child when the request is submitted, focal points and service coordinators must obtain consent for each request. So this could be from a parent, a person acting in the place of a parent, and then consent can also be obtained from a person who's a substitute decision maker. And once again, if you have more questions, please find us and to talk about this. For group requests, it's a little bit different. So consent is required, the same as an individual, if any identifying personal or health information about the child is submitted, and a written confirmation that consent is on file with an organization or a group delivering or requesting the intervention is acceptable. And then we're always confirming with our focal points that we have this information so the request can be processed. So the required documentation guide, I believe I've seen people looking through it already. We have in both languages here, and if you need access to that, let us know. So required documentation. For each Jordan's Principle request, signed documentation is required from a health, social, or educational professional. So this guide helps to outline what is in the SOP in terms of required documentation, and it's a great tool to use. I know we're getting used to this SOP. It's a huge document. Myself, I know Christina had mentioned she worked in community. My background's social work and community. This is my first time with an SOP. So I know there's a lot of information, and you want to get that key information to your families as quickly as possible and make it as accessible as possible and being very straightforward so they know what they need to collect. So this guide is really helpful because it really outlines what's in the SOP, and it's concise. So required documentations could include one of the following. It could be a health, education, or social assessment, a referral, prescription, a letter from a health, social, educational professional, and that's somebody who's involved in the child's life and their circle of care. and it indicates the diagnosis or maybe an identified need and directly recommends the requested product, support, or service. So this is for every request. And we want to keep in mind, I know people are coming from all over Canada, they're coming from remote communities. Please note that a community health, social, and education providers should be considered as qualified in most cases to provide the initial assessment for the needs of the child or the children. So what you have access to. Next, we're going to go into the required documentation for group requests. So some of it you'll notice is similar, and then some is a bit more. So group requests are appropriate when the needs of children seeking services can be met in a group context. So an example of this would be a school class of children. Required documentation, the same, the assessment or recommendation for the specific children identified in the request that links the requested item or service to the identified needs of the children in the request. Once again, that letter from that health, social, educational professional, they're summarizing or demonstrating the identified needs that they're seeing in this group and what that service is at those kids need. And then beyond that, what's different is there's a letter of support or email from the official representing the band, council, or nation.
Just to clarify, it's either one of those two.
Yeah.
It's not both.
Thank you. Did you hear Tanya? It's either one of those. It doesn't have to be both there. Yeah, great. So next we're going to go a bit more into documentation of supporting substantive equality, culturally appropriate service provision, and safeguarding the best interest of the child. So what's that documentation that we're all looking to collect for these three lenses? So once again, when it's beyond normative standard, what can we put in the case to, or the request to show the need of the child? So requests beyond normative standard of care require further documentation or testimony to demonstrate these child's distinct, or group of children, their distinct needs. Focal points use this information to take into consideration the specific needs of the child and details of the child's history, family, or social context. So we have to keep in mind that gathering this documentation should not result in lengthy delays in submitting requests. So we want to be collecting this and doing this as efficiently as possible. So some examples of this are a letter from a social worker, a letter from the elder, so someone involved in that child's life who can give information on the child and how it relates to the needs of this request. So Tanya's going to talk about record keeping.
Okay, so moving on from required documentation. Let's move the slide. There we go. So we've also included in the standard operating procedures a section describing record-keeping requirements for service coordination and service delivery, so depending on the role. This is noted in the data collection instrument in the reporting guide. So each role, for each request, you may be in just a service coordinating role, you may actually be in a service delivery role. So each one of those roles has different record keeping requirements. And so, as you can see on the slide, I won't go into details on those now, but there is quite a description in the standard operating procedures on that. And that's in section 5.2.2.1, and happy to chat about that after as well. Okay, now we can just chat quickly about the escalated requests. So requests that actually make it up to national office, most are approved in the region, but any request that is that the region can't approve in the region are escalated to the national office. And a review is required by the Assistant Deputy Minister of Regional Operations, where a request is not approved by the region. For requests that require additional support or advice from the national office, those don't always go to the ADM. Sometimes they just need a little bit extra discussion, and then they can be approved in the region or reviewed by the Assistant Deputy Minister. For those requests over the age of majority, requests for children with no status number who are not entitled to be registered or are not ordinarily resident on reserve, and where a child is eligible through the interim relief order that came out February 21st, 2019. And so only the assistant deputy minister or their designate has the authority to deny a request. So those are all sent up to national office. Okay, and our last slide is about appeals. So if an individual or a group request has been partially or fully denied, the requester may appeal the decision by submitting a written request to the regional focal point. They may or may not include additional documents or information. It's not mandatory, but they may. And they can do so they must do so within 1 year of the date of denial. When a request is submitted for appeal, it is reviewed by a committee. Currently, as Christina mentioned, we are having a new process that will be implemented in 2020. The current committee does not include the official that reviewed the request and denied the request initially, and an appeal decision will be provided to the requester within 30 days of receipt of the written request. And did you have anything to add to that? Yeah.
So once again, there doesn't have to be additional information, but as I was stating before, we're looking at those three lenses. So assessment or information that demonstrates the evidence that the request should provide substantive equality, culturally appropriate service provision, or safeguarding the best interests of the child. So when you're hearing that this is appeal and they're looking for documentation, these are the lenses we're thinking about and how we can give that full story of the child and the family.
So thank you very much for listening to our presentation. We really look forward to discussing any aspect of the SOP with you in the next session. And do you want to say?
Yeah, just to reiterate what Christina was saying before, and I really appreciate Chief Kevin Hart, what you had shared about, there's a lot of things that you want to share that you're experiencing, and we're here to listen. We're going to be at the tables. There's more of our team from national office, and we're here to listen. We're here to write things down, and as Dr. Blackstock said, I encourage you to have those courageous conversations.
We were debating here at the front table if we open the floor for Q&As or we go right to the tabletop, but I'm thinking people do have questions. So we have our three guests here to take questions. I have 20 minutes for questions, and we're canceling lunch. Okay, go ahead, Kevin.
I don't have a question. What I wanted to do is I want to acknowledge Madeline Gamlin-Walker, who's here, and she was Jordan's caseworker when Jordan was alive, so she was the one that fought that struggle. So she's from Norway House. Let's acknowledge Madeline.
Thank you, Kevin. Any questions? Our guests have been are being nice enough to stick around for our 2 days, and we can have.
Friday morning, so we're here for the rest of the time, not necessarily in here, but we're available.
So they're here right through midnight Thursday evening, and leave only Friday morning.
24/7, 365.
So that's right. Question here. Go ahead.
Je parle français. Je ne sais pas si vous allez pouvoir faire la traduction simultanée.
J'espère qu'il y a de la traduction. Nos écouteurs sont quelque part.
OK, merci. Donc, bonjour tout le monde. Je m'appelle Annie Dubé. Je travaille pour la communauté Anishinaabe de Lac-Simon. Je ne suis pas autochtone de ce que je sache. Mais à Val-d'Or, la ville où j'habite, près de Lac-Simon, il y a toujours eu beaucoup de personnes de la communauté de Lac-Simon, les Algonquins, puis des personnes cries. Donc, depuis que je suis très jeune, je suis en contact.
Her name is Annie Dubé, and she works for the Anishinaabe community of Lac-Simon. She's not Indigenous herself, but where she comes from in Val-d'Or, there's a lot of Algonquins and Cree that are in the Val-d'Or area.
So, me and Francine Penosway, we take care of the Jordan's principal in Lac-Simon. basically now it's her who takes care. Je parle en anglais maintenant.
Ben oui, c'est ça. J'ai remarqué, tu n'as pas besoin de la traduction.
Ce serait pas pire. My brain switched somehow. Francine travaille avec moi à l'Aximon, puis maintenant, c'est elle qui s'occupe du principe de Jordan. So she works for Jordan's principle now. Je vais te laisser continuer à traduire parce que sinon, mon cerveau, il va être mélangé.
Annie and Francine work in the Jordan's Principle file in Lac-Simon. Now Francine is taken over for the Jordan's Principle in this community.
Tout le monde, ils ont everyone has their translation devices, right? So everyone understands the question in French, right?
Yes or no? Oui ou non? No? OK.
There are translation devices available over here, only because I would encourage people to articulate themselves in the language of their choice and not burden our other guests with translating the device. We paid ladies and gentlemen over there to do the translation on our behalf. Comme ça, continue en français, on va le continuer en français, on n'a pas besoin de la traduction.
Parfait, merci. Donc, j'ai la chance d'être blanche parce que c'est des privilèges qui viennent avec, et ça m'a donné l'accessibilité à une éducation de niveau de maîtrise. Je suis orthophoniste à la maîtrise. Okay? Et quand je travaille avec des gens comme Francine, qui ont une expertise sur la culture autochtone, sur les gens de Lac-Simon, sur les traumas qu'ils ont vécus, elle est plus compétente que moi pour faire ce travail-là. Et malheureusement, les démarches, les papiers qui sont demandés, la paperasse, ça représente une barrière importante dans l'offre de services pour les enfants de Lac-Simon. Et c'est probablement une des raisons pourquoi je reste proche encore pour aider pour les finances, puis la paperasse, puis tout ça. Parce que l'éducation et la langue ont été grandement brimées par la colonisation. Et donc, ce que je vois là, c'est une continuation de la colonisation, et c'est ce que je vis dans mon travail. Ce que je souhaiterais, ce serait que plus tard, tout le monde, on s'entraide pour trouver une façon de décoloniser cette façon de faire pour demander les demandes au principe de Jordan.
Merci. I don't know if you want to react to that.
Yeah.
Sure, go ahead, Christine. You can stay right there.
I don't think this is.
Yeah, microphone, first one, my right.
Is it on?
Yep.
I can't speak. My apologies. I'm actually taking French classes soon, so I can become fluently bilingual. I guess that's what happens when, like I was saying, I come from the ground, just like you, working in the field, right, up north in northern Ontario. So I definitely agree with you, and I do think I've taught at the university for a number of years, and it really is about decolonizing our minds to think differently. So I commend you on the work that you do as a non-Indigenous person, but from just listening to you talk that short amount of time, I would have to say that you do have an Indigenous heart. So Chi-miigwech for your hard work.
So in speaking about the decolonization of the process, is that part of the thinking moving forward, or?
Yeah, I think to be honest with you, I wish Cindy was here right now, because even just with me being hired, Cindy Blackstock sat on the hiring committee to look for somebody who saw maybe things differently, not the bureaucratic federal way of doing things. So I bring that to the team. I think. I've been there for 2 months now, and maybe they can speak to and attest to maybe the changes that they've seen.
I totally agree. Thank you, Annie and Francine, and having breakfast with me as well, being my friend. Coming from a social working community, I actually used to run a form-filling clinic, so I think about that often. I think about that so often that I didn't know, and so I do case review, but I get the privilege to work with Tanya, and even looking at that SOP and creating the required documents guide, and you know what, if that language still needs to be more accessible, and I think you keep needing to tell us, and we're continuing to look at these forms and review them and make them more acceptable. I thank you for standing up and saying that truth, and I'll let Tanya speak more to that.
Yeah, no, I would just echo that. We have a lot of work to do in this area. Yeah. Thank you.
Does anyone else want to add anything? Maybe introduce yourself. Sure. Yep.
Hi. My name's Steve. Steve Tierney. I'm the Associate Director of Jordan's Principal at the National Office, working with the team here. And thank you. Et merci beaucoup pour votre comment. There's, you know, for multiple reasons, there's still a lot of growth that needs to occur within Jordan's Principal, whether it's at the national office, within our regional office, and the experts, you guys on the ground in the community, and it's opportunities like today to be able to get that information from the ground, from the experts, up into the senior management realm that are making the decisions and whatnot. And there's many more opportunities. I've been on the file now for about a year, since the year that I've been on, that I've seen growth in removing the barriers for communication. And that's really where it's got to start, in my opinion. And it's communicating, as I mentioned today, it's within our Jordan's Principal Operations Committee and other platforms that we have with our partners, and looking to better integrate, and from hearing from service coordinators, from communities, from community members, so that we can start to look to decolonialize, as you mentioned, both the processes with the forms, keeping in mind that there are other avenues within the government where we have to be able to demonstrate and produce solid accountability, and being able to show that Jordan's Principal, because we know it, we all know it, is changing and making a difference for many children, for many families, many communities. And it's about how do we get that message out to other structures within the government, so that combined and jointly we're able to decolonialize the thinking, the being, the doing. And I think we're on that path. Those are my thoughts.
I think sometimes it's about not overthinking of it and going back to the basics, right? And I think that's where you're getting at. So next meeting I have with Valerie Gideon, I'll talk to her about that and I'll bring that forward. So thanks again for your feedback.
Thank you, everyone. What I want to do is end our Q&A session, because I want to get into table talk discussion, and I want to feed you.
Okay.
So a couple of priorities. So I want to thank our guests. Thank you very much, everyone, for their participation. Also, they will be available if you have any questions. They'll be circulating around. So if there are any clarifications required on the documents that we presented, they're available to you. And you had a last question?
Yeah, I'm just going to, because it's a big area here and I understand that people are walking around and are busy, I'm just going to provide my cell phone number for this conversation. Just if there's any questions or you need to get a hold of somebody, it's easier doing that than it is to try to figure something out. Just don't prank call me later.
Yeah.
I didn't sleep well last night. So it's 613 715-1543.
And this is going out to the World Wide Web out there. Everyone,
Hi, everyone. No, but it's really about doing things differently, and I know that you guys will be respectful and have clear boundaries around that.
Thank you. Miigwech, thank you, everyone. Thanks for their input. And just so you know, this is Cinnabar, right? This is Cinnabar? This is Cinnabar. Cinnabar had been also equipped with a listening device, so we were able to hear all the internal conversations in the department. There's a couple of stitches in the front of his ear, and you'll notice probably because the hearing device was removed a couple of times, but every time we were alone with Cinnabar, we replaced that listening device so we know exactly what's happening within the Department of Indigenous Service Canada, and we do have gifts for your presence today, so thank you very much, everyone. Also find a lovely ring was found in the ladies' washrooms. Please check your fingers and toes if you're missing your ring. Hopefully it's fingers. Tabletop. On your table is questions for your consideration at your table. The first one has to do with the SOP, sorry. And the second part of it is around the There was a request for companion documents. So you'll see at the last page, there's a table of contents around a companion document. So what I would like to do, if we split the table, like the table in the middle here on that side, what I'd like make sure that we at least cover all the questions. If this side of the room can start with the last questions and work their way back to number 1, and this side could start at number 1 and go to number 4, then at least we have started the conversations on each of the questions that have been posed to you. I would ask that you pick someone at your table to take some notes on the page you have here so that we can hand it in. What I'm going to try to do is go to 12:30, so I'm going to give everyone at least a half hour, 35 minutes to start the conversation. You can take it to lunch, fill it all in, have a continual conversation, and then after lunch at 1:30, we'll come back, take 10 minutes to take a last look at your input, and we'll hand them in, and we'll move on to our next agenda item. So I'm trying to catch up and feed you at the same time. So you have your questions, you have your worksheets. This side of the room is starting at number 1. This side of the room is starting at number 4, working your way back. Any questions on the process? We'll ask to hand it in. We'll get the highlights in the last 5 minutes, or after lunch, I'll ask you to highlight the most important message you have in those, and that will be part of our presentation back to you and what we're hearing from you. Note takers will join you if you require one. If you don't, if you have a really super note taker at your table, you don't need one. But please identify someone to track with your conversation. Any questions, issues, concerns, fears? Seeing none? Ready? Go. If I could have your attention just for one short minute. J'aimerais savoir nos délégués qui sont francophones unilingues, qui aimeraient travailler en français. Parce que là, on a des tables bilingues, puis ça va être difficile un peu de se parler les deux langues, puis pas se comprendre. Peut-être qu'on devrait faire une table francophone, pour au moins ceux qui sont francophones peuvent travailler dans la langue française, puis les autres peuvent travailler en anglais-français. Does that make sense? Can I create a francophone table? Trading deadline is not till 12:30, so I'm allowed to trade from your tables back and forth. I would suggest those at this table's full of. Yes? There's another table back there? Okay, so the table back there, ceux qui sont francophones, qui aimeraient travailler en français, unilingue, dans le coin là-bas. So the francophone delegates who can speak, who prefer to work in French, I'd ask to go to the table in the back. Those at the table in the back who want to speak in a different language, come join the gaps that have been created at the other tables. Ceux qui peuvent travailler dans les deux langues, tu peux rester à votre table. Those who can work in both languages, you can stay at your own tables. If you prefer to speak French, we have a francophone table over there. Thank you for bringing that. Okay, should already be answering your first question, right? You're on your first question. I've been asked to clarify a little bit about the companion document. You have on the last page of your sheet a table of contents around a suggested companion document. So what we really want to know, are those the pieces that are key in the companion document? It's not been developed yet, so here's your opportunity to provide a table of contents of what you'd like to see in that companion document.
Hi, sorry, I'm Laura Mitchell. I work with the Jordan's Principle Action Table, but I work for the federal government. The request for the companion document actually came from the Action Table. They said, we need something to help us walk through the standard operating procedures so we understand what focal points are looking for when they're making a request, but we don't want a 90-page document, which is what the focal points have. So the idea of the companion piece is, what do you need to include in a request so that it is as simple as possible for you to get to an approval? So the table of contents that we have proposed is what we think you may want, but after you've had that presentation, you may have heard other things that you think should be included. So one of the goals of the table talk is to help us get a bit of a sense from the room what you think would be valuable in a compendium document that we will then develop, co-develop at the action table in the coming months. So just to help contextualize what we're actually looking for in that piece.
Okay, everybody, 4 minutes till lunch. See if you can get through the current conversation, the current question you're dealing with. Here's what I propose. I just want to make sure everyone hears what I'm going to propose so that afterwards there's no questions on my proposition. I would propose you take lunch, continue your conversations there to see if you can get through all the questions that have been posed to you. Come back after lunch, take 5 or 10 minutes to wrap up the conversation, and then we're going to move to tabletop 2. So a little pressure in terms of making sure that we have your input, and a big concern is that you take this document home with you without providing us your answers. So don't do that. Please hand in your worksheets afterwards. As a group and individually, you can hand in your worksheets. Let's have lunch. Let's have lunch. They're waiting for you over there. The apple crisp is getting cold. So let's have lunch. Let's come back here close to 1:30 as we can. Wrap up our conversations. 22, we're going to move into our panel discussion number 2 and tabletop conversations. Have your lunch, charge up, finish your conversations there. Come back 1:30, we'll start up again. Miigwech, everyone. Good start. You're right into it. I'm liking how everything's unfolding. Miigwech.